Hello students, welcome to the class. Now in this video we are going to look into the drama that we have in unit 4 of semester 2, which is The Merchant of Venice, written by William Shakespeare, and we are going to look into the act 4 and scene 1. Now in this video we'll be particularly looking at how famous this particular play was, and then we'll also be looking into Shakespeare's life and also his works, and also the influence of Shakespeare in the English language on the English language. And moreover, we will also be looking at the plot of The Merchant of Venice. Mind you, this is part 1 of the whole class, and the remaining part will be concluded or done in the part 2 of another video. Okay, now William Shakespeare lived during the years 1564 and 1616, and this particular play, The Merchant of Venice, was written around 1596 to 97. Now this is one of his most popular plays, which consists of many famous characters like Shylock and Portia and Antonio, and also many memorable lines and a few dramatic scenes are also present in this particular play. Now this is included in the first folio or the compilation of his comedies in the first folio. Now one of the wonderful thing about this particular play, The Merchant of Venice, is there have been many screen and television adaptations of this particular play. It has been translated and also has been performed in movies as well as in theater, on stage, in many different languages. Before going into actually understanding the play and trying to get a view of what Shakespeare wanted to present in the play, let us take a look at William Shakespeare's life. Now, William Shakespeare is considered to be the greatest dramatist and poet of the English language. He was not only a poet and a playwright, but also an efficient actor of his times. He is often called as English national poet, and he has been given the title of Bard of Avon. When we try to look at his early life, his father was a wealthy merchant in Stratford, and he had spent his early childhood in Stratford, but his father entered into some sort of financial crisis, and they were not well to do in the early part of his childhood. And Shakespeare was very early married at the age of 19 to Anne Hathaway, and while she was 26 years of age, and they had children. And it's also a known fact that his son Hamlet died when he was only 11 years of age. Now, Shakespeare went to London, and that changed his course of life for the next many years. And in London, Shakespeare began to work as an actor and also began to put his writings into place. And later on, he was also associated with the Globe Theatre in London, where it was like performing many of his plays performed in the Globe Theatre. And Shakespeare also had this distinction of getting patronage from two different monarchs, Queen Elizabeth I and as well as King James I. So Shakespeare was one of the influential persons during that English Renaissance, where English language was really being used by many people, and it became a force in the European countries. Now, when we look at William Shakespeare's works, now Shakespeare works include nearly 38 plays or dramas for that matter, and 2 narrative poems, long narrative poems, and nearly 150 sonnets, and also a variety of other poems. And the collection of his works actually places different dramas in different times of his life. And the early plays, which were written probably in 5 years from 1590 to 95, and nearly nine plays, most of them were comedies like Romeo and Juliet, sorry, The Taming of the Shrew, The Comedy of Errors, Lost Labor Lost, Two Gentlemen of Verona. These were the early plays that were written by Shakespeare. And then Shakespeare has also written many histories like Richard III, Richard II, Henry IV, and Henry V, King John, and all these historical plays were written by Shakespeare. Actually, they were depicting real lives of kings and monarchs. And then there is also some of his plays are also classified as the later comedies, which became very famous. And The Merchant of Venice is part of that later comedies. And Midsummer Night's Dream, As You Like It, Twelfth Night, Measure for Measure, All's Well That Ends Well. Now these are the other comedies that were written in that period. And Shakespeare was also involved in writing plays which had the Roman culture and the Roman tradition as part of its background. And there were plays like Antony and Cleopatra, or Coriolanus, or Julius Caesar for that matter. And his later tragedies uh, were some of the best plays that he had written, like Hamlet, and you had the Othello, King Lear, Macbeth, and also the late plays include The Tempest, The Winter's Tale too. Now, William Shakespeare is considered to be the single greatest influence in shaping the English language. And you might be surprised to know that before Shakespeare, English language was not in a standard form, and his works contributed towards the standardization of English grammar, spelling, and vocabulary. Max Weber said that Shakespeare had used more than 15,000 words in writing his plays, and most of those words were invented by him. We find many times we use words like assassination or weird or fashionable. They were all coined by Shakespeare himself. And we also find that Shakespeare contributed numerous memorable phrases to the English language. All the world's a stage, to be or not to be, all's well that ends well are some of the examples of the numerous memorable phrases that we presently use were once actually they were coined by Shakespeare. And to put it in a sentence, in a nutshell, the English that we use right now could be the Shakespeare's language. In other words, Shakespeare's language uh, is what the English that we are using as of now. Okay, now when we look into the main characters of the play, we find we have Antonio, who is a wealthy merchant in the city of Venice. He has many ships, and now he has sent his ships to sea on business trips. Now he has a great friend, a very young man named Bassanio. And this Bassanio comes from a noble family, but is actually in very much need of money. And the most important character in this play is Portia. Now she is a wealthy woman, but also a very intelligent and beautiful woman, and she actually becomes Bassanio's wife. And the antagonist or the villain in the poem is Shylock. He's a Jewish moneylender, he's very greedy and also cruel. There are also other minor characters in the poem like Gratiano and Lorenzo, who are Bassanio's friends, Nerissa, Portia's maid, and the Duke, the judge who is appointed to actually solve the case of Antonio and Shylock. Now, when we look at the plot of the play actually consists of 5 acts and with many different scenes. Now, in Act 1, we find that Bassanio comes to his friend Antonio with a personal problem. Bassanio is deeply in love with a wealthy woman in Belmont named Portia, and there are many suitors for her hand in marriage in Belmont. And many rich people are coming to actually ask her hand. And Bassanio wants to go there. but he needs money for that. And he asks Antonio to lend him some money, but Antonio cannot lend him money because all his money is in his ships which are at sea. So Bassanio goes to a moneylender named Shylock, who is actually very angry with Antonio because Shylock is a greedy merchant and he has been giving money on much interest rates, which offended Antonio, and Antonio was giving money without any interest. So there was a clash of interest between these two people, and Shylock was looking for an opportunity to take revenge on Antonio. Now that opportunity had come to him. When Antonio and Bassanio come to Shylock for the amount of 3,000 ducats as loan, Shylock readily agrees, strangely. And he says, okay, he will not even charge any interest for the money. But then he says he wants these two people to write a bond. And in the bond, he mentions that if Antonio fails to return the money in the stipulated time, that is 3 months, he will take a pound of flesh from Antonio's body. Despite Bassanio trying to refuse, Antonio goes on and signs the bond. In Act 2, we find many people coming to Portia to ask her hand in marriage. And Portia's father had written a will where he mentioned that only that young man who would choose the right casket of the three caskets will actually get her in marriage. And Portia was worried about when different princes were coming from different places. And ultimately, Bassanio arrives in time with the money he has borrowed from Shylock, and actually he wins Portia's hand in marriage. And there are some minor plots going on in Act 3, but finally we come to know that Bassanio has forgot his friend's bond, and the time period has lapsed, and now Antonio's ships were all lost, and Antonio couldn't repay back the money he took from Shylock. So Shylock has gotten Antonio arrested, and all these things happen. So this is the background before Act 4 that we actually have in the text room. In Act 4, we find the courtroom scene where Antonio is standing his trial and Shylock is demanding that pound of flesh. And how Shylock is defeated and how Antonio gets out of this fix is what we find in Act 4. Okay, so we'll continue that part of Act 4 in the next video. So continue watching the second part of this video and try to understand this. In the second video, what we'll be doing is we'll be going into the summary of Act 4 as well as different character sketches that we find, and also some important quotes in the scene 1 of Act 4. Thank you.